lot happened this week. Today, we'll be diving into agents, why everyone's obsessed with them, why new tools make today the best time to get into coding, and is AI's progress plateauing? Spoilers, it's complicated. I'm Al, and here's my 3 cents. The AI world has a new favorite buzzword, and it's giving AI itself a run for its money. Companies are racing to build agents, VCs are throwing money at them, and everyone seems to have a different definition of what it actually means. But under all the hype, there is something real happening, and we've got to pay attention. To get us started, LangChain released a report on the state of AI agents. LangChain is a toolkit that makes it easy to use language models. As part of this report, they surveyed over 1,300 professionals. Engineers, product managers, executives, business leaders, and what they found was really interesting. But before diving in, they wanted to level set on what even is an agent. This is important because everyone's got a different definition. For them, they're saying that an agent is a system that uses a language model to decide the control flow of an application. That's a whole bunch of words, but down here we can see what people are actually using them for, and that helps ground it a little bit. We can see that the vast majority are using it to do research and summarization. But you also see things like personal assistance, code generation, data transformation, storytelling, and even companionship. What's really interesting here is you can see that while only half of the people surveyed actually had an agent in production, over 3/4 are currently developing an agent with plans to put it in production. These numbers seem a little high to me. I wouldn't be surprised if we had a biased sample, because people responding to LangChain surveys are probably pretty into AI already themselves. But still, these numbers are big. They talk about some of the controls that people have in place, and it seems like the most popular option is tracing, or making sure that they know where the AI is getting its citations. There's also, of course, a lot of guardrails, and then some kind of evaluation, which is a fancy way of saying that they've tested it on whatever they're trying to run it on. They're also starting to give these AIs tools, like reading, writing to some databases, or even deleting data. Most people are using it with human approval, but there definitely are some people who are letting it go all by itself. We'll talk a little bit more about what it means to automate something completely versus having a copilot a little bit later. Now, one last thing to highlight here. As always, if you want to check this out in more detail, there'll be links in the description. But it looks like the limitation for people putting more agents in production is quality, which, no surprise there. It's hard to get the best output for tests where real people are doing them today. But interesting to see cost as being a second one. While these models may not cost a lot themselves, the skill set, getting the right developers, getting the right team in place can cost a pretty penny. And third on the top 3 list is, of course, safety. If you're interested in learning more about the safety and ethics concerns, this week, Google DeepMind actually published a podcast on the ethics of AI assistants. Here they also talk about the definition of an AI assistant before getting into a little bit more about the ethics of using these advanced AI assistants and how they can align with our values, stop deception, and some ideas as to how we can set up these tools in a way that doesn't exacerbate inequality. Andreessen Horowitz, or A16Z, also this week published their opinion on how they see agents fitting into the larger economy. Their take, which is shared by one of their investments they made this week, is that AI turns labor into software. For A16, they see AI agents as fulfilling the original promise of robotic process automation. RPA is actually an existing market. It's one that was over $1 billion in 2020 and has grown every year since, to an estimated 5 or 6 billion this year, showing no signs of slowing down. One of the limitations to RPA is that you had to manually define all of the possible paths an automation could take. Versus now, with LLMs, we see a next generation where the agents can make the decisions themselves to go from point A to point B. Specifically, they see the market as focused on 2 main areas: horizontal AI that can do a specific task for a broad range of companies, and vertical automation solutions, agents that accomplish specific workflows end to end. An example of horizontal AI might be looking at something like parsing unstructured data, get some output, contextualize it, and turn it into something structured so that you can use it down the road. Whereas something vertical plays into the subject matter expertise of whoever's implementing it. So it might be something in healthcare where you might have to automate the referral management flow, take information from PDFs or faxes, and then actually get it back into the EHR or the system of record. It might be in something totally different, like trucking, where some agents might help check on load status and get updates using some AI-powered voice assistants. Now, if agents are language models that have access to tools, they need some tools to use. That's why this week, Stripe actually announced their Stripe Agent Toolkit. The whole goal here is to let developers add the ability for language models to pay within their workflows. Their definition of an agentic workflow is using a language model and function to achieve an objective. So in this case, one example that might look like is somebody asking to book a flight from New York to San Francisco for under $500. The steps there might be using AI to take the question and pull out the origin, the destination, departure time, and budget. Then you might have to filter those flights, give them some options, and finally purchase the flight. That's where the Stripe Language Toolkit comes in. With the Stripe Agent Toolkit, you can now easily integrate Stripe into popular agent frameworks. In this example, we had humans in the loop, but in our last announcement that we'll cover this week, we actually saw 11x raise $50 million in their Series B, led by A16Z we just covered. And you might see something familiar here. They are turning code into labor. For them, they're not building software. They're building digital workers, or that's their goal. They don't want to sell tools. They want to focus on the outcomes. Something that's a little contentious here that not everyone agrees with is that they are trying to build an autopilot, not a co-pilot. They don't want to charge your team based on seats. They want to charge it based on tasks completed. Now, my take. People have talked a lot about keeping humans in the loop. I think that's a good idea, but we got to be real. Where people can, they're going to automate. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but I do think that it means that we're going towards a future where we're going to need specialists who deeply understand these things when these systems inevitably go sideways. There is good news though. To become that specialist, you need to be able to learn effectively, and AI really helps at that. We've seen some examples of AI helping humans learn before. In 2016, a computer beat the world champion at the ancient game of Go. After losing, the world champion said its style was different and it was such an unusual experience. It took time for me to adjust, and it made him realize that he must study the game more. The European champion echoed that sentiment, saying that the matches with AlphaGo had him seeing the game completely differently. And he improved so much that his rankings skyrocketed. I think that's why working with AI agents are actually going to make us better at understanding and managing large, complex systems. And in that world in the future where AI agents are acting autonomously, I think there's going to be a huge opportunity to build tools designed for those agents, not necessarily for humans. We're seeing early examples of that with the proposed LLMs.txt file. This is a proposal by a renowned AI educator, Jeremy Howard, saying that we should have files attached to websites that help language models use them. We're also seeing this play out in the world of crypto. A couple autonomous agents like Truth Terminal or Aether are starting to make decisions of where to put funds and send out tokens by themselves, and people can't stop watching. But it shows that they benefit from open protocols and tools that they can control autonomously in that world. This may very well be what pushed Stripe to release their agent toolkit. To me, the best way to think about agents is if there's something that you do manually and frequently and it doesn't spark joy, an agent might be the answer to that. But I'd recommend starting small, and you almost always need to be able to do something manually before you can automate it. Think cogs, not gods. Going back to our report from LangChain, I'd suggest things like research summarization and data transformation over things like customer service. Now, what you can do today. If you're a beginner, OpenAI just released the ability to search within ChatGPT. To turn it on, you just click the search button that appears within chat, and then you'll have access to a few different things. You can get weather, you can get information on stocks, sports games and schedules, news, what's happening currently, and even information about maps. I think this is a great, gentle interaction to how AI agents work. Play around with it, see what it can do and see what it can't, and just start building that intuition. I'm gonna say that a lot today. Now, if you've already started playing with ChatGPT and language models, another great place to start is actually building an agent. LangChain has a tutorial on how you can build your first agent that can interact with a search engine. This is cool because you'll be able to ask the agent questions, you'll see it actually go look at the tools that it can use and use that tool to search for relevant information and continue the conversation. Now, if you're looking for a bigger challenge than just that basic example, a cool project you could build is going one step further, taking that research that you'll do and actually turning it into a PowerPoint presentation. LangChain had a great tutorial here where she created a workflow that went and found research papers on a given topic, used language models to get insights and summaries from it, then generate a PowerPoint deck using those summaries. You can follow along with all of her code here, and if you're curious about some of the results, this is what it looked like. Now, if you don't know how to code, using AI, it's never been easier. If you do know how to code, congrats. You now have superpowers, and those will continue to grow. I really mean it when I say that there's never been a better time to get into learning how to code, and the market is showing the same. $4 million in 4 weeks. That's how much revenue that StackBlitz was able to generate with their new tool, Bolt, that lets anybody make web apps through conversation. Meanwhile, if you don't want to have that more automatic generation, traditional coding tools are getting AI superpowers that would make Tony Stark jealous. The coding landscape isn't just evolving, it is having a revolution in it. And anyone, whether you are a beginner or a staff software engineer, is invited to the party. So what happened this week? Well, Anthropic released a case study about StackBlitz Bolt and how they went from nothing to 4 million in annualized revenue in 4 weeks. A big reason these coding tools are getting better is there was a new Claude model that came out that was better than anything else on the market. That let people go from an idea to production deployment in a single click and reduced cost of app development by 99%. Earlier this week, I posted about how I asked it to help me make an escape room AI game. And in 30 seconds, with just a few prompts, I had thousands of lines of code written for me, and I was able to go from an idea to a proof of concept that I could see in minutes. If you want to dive in a little bit further, there was actually a great interview released this week with the CEO of Bolt, where they talk about Bolt for beginners. They have a quick intro before diving right into building a couple different product ideas. So if you're interested, check it out. Now, if you're a developer who spent years honing their craft, you don't want AI to write all of your code for you, but a copilot still can help. Supermaven is a company that deeply understands this. They're not trying to have an automatic copilot. They want to empower developers. To do that, initially, they focused on having a model that was faster and could handle more context and generate great code. But they realized to take that next step, it wasn't just smarter models, but because we're going through this revolution and having new capabilities, they needed to co-design a user interface to access those capabilities in a great way. They actually started building their own editor, but they were in touch with Cursor, who is an AI code editor fresh off a $60 million Series A. And ultimately, they announced that this week they'll be joining the Cursor team. This is a little surprising because Supermaven themselves raised $12 million in September, but ultimately, it really did make sense. And if you're curious to hear their point of view, there was also an interview this week with two of the founders, one of Cursor and Supermaven, where they talk about their different points of view on the collaboration. Now, in between a copilot and a fully automated solution, there is a middle ground that does a little bit of both. That's why Codium released Windsurf. Here they envision an IDE powered by agents where the work of developers and the work of AI truly flow together. For Codium, they literally mention an AI that can collaborate you like a copilot, but also tackle independent problems like an agent. The kicker is that the AI is completely in sync with you every step of the way. But if you don't know how to code but still want to dip your toe in, Windsurf is a good option. They had their team who are not engineers take a stab at building some new apps. A lot of them were games like making clones of Wordle, Brick Breaker, or Space Invaders, but also some more advanced tools like something to make quotes for your clients. All of these done within 5 minutes. Now, one last big announcement in the AI coding world is Alibaba's Qwen team released the best ever open source coding model. And they didn't just release one. They released a family of 6 models, making sure that anybody on a range of hardware can run these models on device. That means you can run them locally without sending anyone your data. Now, I'd recommend having a powerful Mac or NVIDIA machine before diving in here, but this model can really perform. You can see in their benchmarks that their largest Qwen 2.5 coder model, man, we really got to work on these names, outperforms GPT-4o in all but one of the benchmarks that they shared here. And that's all on top of the fact that you don't need to send your data to GPT-4o or Claude. So what's my take? This isn't just about making coding easier. It's about removing barriers between ideas and execution. Bolt getting to $4 million in annual recurring revenue in 4 weeks tells us what we already know, that people have ideas and they want to build those ideas, but they didn't know how, or they couldn't justify the high costs of your typical software development. Now the only barrier to entry is having an idea, which is hard, but it's a much lower barrier to entry, and you can get to a proof of concept so much faster. And I love that we're seeing a beautiful spectrum emerge here. You've got Bolt for the just ship it crowd. Then you've got Cursor and Supermaven for those specialists that might have to go deep under the hood and know every single word that is going into the code base. And then you've got Windsurf trying to find a sweet spot right in between. I think this is great because we've actually seen studies like this one from Harvard Business School that looked at how GitHub Copilot, a generative AI code completion tool, was a huge help because it allowed people to really focus on their core work of coding and not as much on things like project management. Let people work autonomously and explore new ideas. But they saw that these effects were greater for people that had relatively lower ability. But on the other side of the spectrum, this study from MIT from just a couple weeks ago actually showed that for something a little bit more specialized like scientific discovery, where we saw AI helping researchers find almost 44% more materials and a 40% increase in filing patents, they saw that the bottom third of scientists didn't see a lot of benefit, but their top researchers nearly doubled their output. To me, this shows that AI really is a general purpose person amplifier. A couple other takeaways too. The Cursor Supermaven connection signals something deeper too. I think that we're gonna see more consolidation. I think we're gonna see a world where small teams of really passionate people can build awesome products, and they'll have more opportunities to actually get acquired because it won't make sense to build everything in-house. It'll make more sense to go look for a passionate team of individuals working on something they care about and then bring them in to work on something complementary to your own product. The open source release of Qwen 2.5 is also a big deal. Because yeah, for the first time, you can have an AI model write code without sharing your data to anybody and have it be the best model available. But you need to spend time setting it up and you need to have the hardware. So I see a lot of teams still choosing the convenient cloud API. So we're entering this era where you can have some choices. On one side, you'll have maximum convenience. It'll be easy to get up and running quick. And then on the other, you'll have much more control. It'll take some more work to get it set up. But if it means a lot to you, having that option is huge. So what can you do today? If you've never written code, I'd recommend starting with bolt.new. Like seriously, just go to the site with an idea, any idea, chat a little bit, and then watch it come to life. And if you do, tag me, send it to me. I'm really curious what you're able to build. If you're already a developer or you just want to dive right in, you've got options. If a balanced AI companion sounds more your vibe, check out Windsurf. If you want that fine-grained control, maybe give Cursor a shot. And if privacy is important to you and you know what you're doing, get Qwen 2.5 running and plug it right in. A key use case for Qwen 2.5 is that integration with Cursor. Now, last but not least, is AI progress slowing down? The headlines are getting spicy. Reuters says we're hitting limits. Qwen and Google's new model they dropped last week just crushed every benchmark. The cost of running these models is in freefall, 10 times cheaper than it was last year. But training them's getting harder. So let's break it down. Reuters reported that OpenAI and others are looking for new paths to train their AI models. A key part of their report is an opinion from Ilya Sutskever, who's a renowned machine learning scientist. He helped co-found OpenAI and has since left and co-founded a competitor called Safe Superintelligence. But he said that the results from scaling up pre-training, or the part of training where we just give the AI model a whole bunch of data to have it learn from, has plateaued. They also report that researchers at major AI labs are running into delays and some disappointment. This is a big deal because every time you try and train these models, it can cost tens of millions of dollars. They say that pre-training is one component, but that we also have gobbled up all of the easily accessible data. So what gives? Are we done with progress here? If you go beyond the headline, they actually address some of these problems and help us know that no, progress will continue. To overcome these, people are looking at test time compute, which is just a fancy way of saying instead of giving a single answer, let's have AI think about it a little bit. See if it thinks its first answer is any good and maybe make some changes. Turns out, if you have a bot think for just 20 seconds in a hand of poker, you get the same performance increase as if you made it 100,000 times bigger and trained it 100,000 times longer. Maybe we really should think a little bit before we speak. And these big AI labs know that they can get performance increases like this. That's part of why OpenAI's new model, O1, can actually think through problems. Dan Schipper at Every had a similar point of view. Is AI progress hitting a wall? In one word, no. Dan was inspired a little bit about watching his 2-year-old nephew learn. Even though it might be factually accurate to say that pre-training might be slowing down, that entirely new paradigm of letting the models think creates totally new territory for scaling. And just like his nephew didn't stop growing when he started walking, he only shifted to mastering language. AI progress isn't slowing down. It's just shifting to new ways of improving. And we can see this happening in real time. Google DeepMind just released a new model that is now ranked #1 overall in the chatbot arena. The chatbot arena is a place where you can go and compare the results of 2 different models at the same time. For example, asking it to write a poem about AI agents. We can see how 2 models take different approaches to the same problem. Once they're done, you can vote on which one might be a little bit better, and it tells you which model made what. And so we can see that their new model jumped up to #1 overall, #1 in math, #1 in creative writing, but not quite #1 in coding. Still a big deal to get OpenAI off their throne at #1. Not to mention that A16Z shared their research that the cost of using language models is going down fast. If we look at the past 3 years, we can see that the cost of using a language model has dropped by 1,000 times to get the same kind of intelligence. That's just with language models. This week, we also saw a new state-of-the-art background removal model, and the TikTok team released Magic Quill, a tool that lets you edit images with words. All you have to do is draw on the parts of the image that you'd like to make some changes to. It gives you already a suggestion of how you want to change it, and just with a few brushstrokes and some different ideas, you can edit images in almost real time. So my take is that headlines about AI progress slowing down are missing the bigger picture. In the same way that humans learn, each breakthrough that we make builds on top of existing knowledge, often in unexpected ways. And that's where we're at with AI. It's not hitting a wall, but finding new paths forward. Every day that the cost to call these models goes down, there are more and more opportunities to use them that become financially viable. Even if the model capabilities plateaued today, and they won't, we'd still see an explosion of practical applications, because things that may have been 1,000 times too expensive a few years ago are cheap. And I truly believe that the next wave of software that's going to come out is not going to be driven by AI engineers. It's going to be driven by subject matter experts in something else that use AI to solve real problems that they understand better than anybody else. It won't matter if you're in a well-funded research lab in Silicon Valley, if you're in your parents' basement or in a vineyard in France. If you solve a problem, there's value there. And I think these models are more like instruments than science. The best results that I've seen come from people who have developed their intuition and finesse and just use these tools a lot and learned what works and what doesn't. Something that's really helped me is drilling into my head that if I get a bad response, it's rarely because AI can't do something. Usually it's my fault. The prompt, the context that I gave the model might not have been useful, or the question I asked it isn't really what I wanted. And that's not a limitation. It's an invitation to show that subject matter expertise, show that mastery that you've developed. And the question is, like, what's worth mastering to you? So what can you do today? If you're just starting out, I will always recommend to just try downloading the ChatGPT app and use the advanced voice mode. Talk to it. See how it thinks. Ask it to explain concepts, some you know about and some you don't. Ask follow-up questions or just bounce ideas back and forth. After that, maybe even ask your boss if you can start experimenting with AI tools at work. If you frame it as a learning opportunity, you'd be surprised how many leaders are curious and excited about having you take the plunge. If you're already using AI daily, one thing I'd recommend checking out is Anthropic's console. They already had a tool to generate a prompt that can take a simple sentence, that can take a simple instruction like summarizing documents into 10 bullet points, and use some best practices of prompt engineering to turn it into a well thought out formal prompt. And you can learn from this example. Now, something that's new this week is their prompt improving tool. You can pass in that same prompt we've generated and maybe say that we need the prompt more concise and to instead grab quotes from the article, not summarizing it in your own words. And this tool takes the same kind of approach of thinking step by step and reflecting on its plan to plan the initial draft, then write the initial draft, plan some revisions to that, write a final draft, and give you a well-polished final result. Now there's no excuse for giving some simple prompts because you can feed it to AI to have it give you some new ideas. And on the subject of prompts, get weird with it. Try role-playing with it or experimenting with different writing styles. The best way to understand these models' capabilities is to push their boundaries. If art is more your speed, try out that new background removal tool. Or give Magic Quill a shot. See what happens if you try making some changes to a picture with AI. You might be surprised. And this is just the start. Hugging Face Spaces has so many other models you can try. Find something that makes you curious and play with it. Remember, the goal isn't to master everything, but find some specific areas you care about where AI might be able to amplify existing skills. All to say, if there's one theme that's emerging from this week's development, it's that AI is becoming less about the technology and more about what you want to do with it. The barriers to creation have never been lower, but the ceilings to expertise have never been higher. The best time to start might have been 10 years ago, but the second best time is now. The tools are ready. The only question is, what will you build first? Al Duffy with Alex AI, November 18th, 2024, signing off.